Right, is everyone ready to get this thing rolling? First, I'll introduce our lovely presenter today, Aaron Marusha. He's going to be talking today about voting rights and all that kind of fun stuff, and I'll let them take it away from here and introduce themselves.
Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. My name's Aaron Barucha. I'm one of the Civic Engagement and Leadership Coordinators here at the University of Idaho's CVSA, or Center for Volunteerism and Social Action. Before we kick it off to our lovely guest and presenter, Roseli, I just wanted to give a quick presentation to everyone about voting because Election Day is coming up. So I just wanted to give a gist about Latah County's voting rules and give you some key dates and times. I will go ahead and share my screen, and I do hope this works. Okay, so we are, excuse me, set to go. So as I said, I'm from the Center for Volunteerism and Social Action. Every voting season, we have a campaign called Vandals Vote, headed by our program coordinator, Amber Schneider. And so this is part of that initiative. First, we'll talk about talk about your ballot, like what it looks like and stuff like that. Give me a second. Let me see if I can get my notes pulled up. Give me a second. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. Sorry. Sorry, give me a second, everyone. I'm gonna try to get this without that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so sorry about that. So first, to start off with your ballot. So we have for this year, for 2020, we have a variety of elections going on at all levels of government. So we have the presidential election. So the candidates for the president will be on your ballot. That includes Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Joe Biden and Joe Jorgensen, etc. I think there will be 4, and then there are write-in options, but it depends state by state. Next, we have candidates for Congress. So for Latah County, you'll see David Nelson and Dan Foreman, who are both running for state senate to represent our district. And finally, you'll have candidates for local office. So for example, Latah County Commissioner, you have Gabriel Wrench and the incumbent Tom Lamar, who are both running for County Commissioner. Second, important dates and times. So for early voting occurs Monday, October 13th through Thursday, October 29th. And that is 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's also, for those of you who are busy on weekdays, it also occurs 2 Saturdays. One is October 17th and one is October 24th. These dates have passed though. And finally, Friday, October 30th is the last day, and that is 9 to 5. For election day, which is Tuesday, November 3rd, the polls will be open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And we do encourage you, if you can, to vote early. I know there's only a few days left, but because of the current climate and the dangers of the coronavirus, it's just much safer to vote early, and you interact with less people and touch less things that other people have touched, which is great. In terms of where, so early voting, you'll drop your ballot off at the Latah County Courthouse. And that, if you look here, is us at University of Idaho. And then you just go down 6th Street to get to the Latah County Courthouse. And that's for early voting. For same day voting on election day, you will want to go to, if you live on campus, you'll want to go to the Student Rec Center. That's where your polling location will be. Give me a second. If you live off campus and you're planning on voting in person, then your voting location will most likely not be the Student Rec Center. To figure out where you'll be voting in Moscow, you'll want to go to idahovotes.gov, and there it'll tell you your voting location based on your precinct. Okay, so for same-day voting, you'll want to bring a valid picture ID. So that can be, for students, that can be your Vandal card, or it can be your driver's license. And you'll want to bring proof of residency. Apparently, I didn't know this until recently, but proof of residency can literally be an Amazon receipt order. So you can go, if you have the Amazon app and you recently made an order, you can just bring your phone with the Amazon app and pull that up, as long as it has your name and your address. Also, if you live in the residence halls, housing was great this year. They sent you an email earlier, and it looked something like this, and it just said, attached is your proof of residency, and attached was this lovely PDF, which shows proof of residency, and you can just show this to the polls when you show up on November 3rd. And also, please wear a mask. That is important. And that is probably going to be a rule everywhere you go to vote. So yes, please do that. And with that, I think I will stop sharing. And one thing the CVSA is pushing this year is the fact that, you know, we often see voting as a right, which it is, but it doesn't, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a privilege. It is a privilege. There are plenty of productive United States residents who contribute a lot to this country, to the economy, who unfortunately do not get to vote. And that leads us into our lovely speaker today, Roseli, who is a DACA recipient. And she is an intern at the ACLU of Idaho down in Boise. And she's going to talk to us about her experience as a DACA recipient and how she gets involved with activism. And Roseli, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aaron. You look lovely like always. And I just want to start off. So my name is Roseli Guerrero. I am the advocacy. I actually am the advocacy fellow now. I was the intern, but they offered me a position. So I'm the advocacy fellow now at the ACLU of Idaho. And I'm also a DACA recipient. So let me pull up my little presentation here. Can everyone see it? I know I can't see anybody, but a thumbs up or something, so I know that everyone can see this presentation.
Yeah, you're good, Roseli, we can see it.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so my pronouns are she, her, ella, and so for those of you that don't know, so DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So DACA has been under attack, and for me, there's been a lot of emotions, obviously, that have been happening throughout this whole year, and I feel like throughout the years. This is a poem that I wrote before the Supreme Court decision, because I didn't know how to express everything that was going on, and it was just kind of hard to like put it into words, so I decided to just write it instead. This is a little excerpt of what, kind of like some of the emotions that were going through me, that were happening with me. So one of the biggest thing is like, I am a dreamer, even though I hardly sleep at night, sleep at all. I feel that has been definitely the feelings that many dreamers, many DACA recipients have been feeling throughout the years. Let's see. So how did I start with my road to activism? So I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I came to the US when I was 5. So this little picture, this is an exclusive picture, you guys. I will not post this on my social media, but this is actually, my parents are from Nayarit, Mexico. So this is a traditional outfit that people from Nayarit wear. I was 3 years old. I hated dresses, still do. That's why I was really mad in that picture. So I came to the US when I was 5. And all I knew when I was coming here, I was definitely very young, was that we were coming here to El Norte, that's what we call it, to search for the American dream, el sueño americano. And I knew that over here was just like the land of opportunities. Back home, everyone would talk about it, and everyone was just excited because over here, the opportunities were endless. I feel that as I grew older, I realized that those opportunities definitely came with a lot of tears, with a lot of anger at times. And I think it wasn't until high school when I realized my status in this country. And, once my friends started getting driver's license, and, that's when it kind of hit like, oh, okay, well, I can't get a driver's license. And realizing like, oh, I can't work here either because I don't have a work permit. I don't have a social. So it definitely, like in high school, everyone's, I think when everybody thinks about their high school experience, everybody thinks about prom and like homecoming games. And for me, it was just a moment of like just realizing like, hey, I'm in this country that I call home. I'm in this country that I've grown up in, and I've I know like pretty much everything about, more than I know where I was born, but yet I'm not technically, can't really do much here. I can't drive, I can't work. So it was a roller coaster of emotions, to say the least. And then with the Obama administration, they brought forward DACA. And when DACA came about, it definitely just kind of took a lot of weight off my shoulders. I was able to get my driver's license. I got my work permit. And when I got my work permit, that same week, I went to apply for a job, and I got a job a week after. So that was amazing. And it just gave me that sense of security. But I also knew that it was a temporary security that I was going through, because we never knew, DACA is not something permanent. And as we can tell right now, it can come, it can go, and there's a lot of moving pieces through it. So being undocumented, there's, even our parents, they think a lot about like keeping it on the low. We don't really share our status. We don't talk to people about our status, because that can mean deportation. So that's kind of how I grew up, and many other DACA recipients and undocumented folks feel like. And, I feel like I've always been very outspoken, but not about my status. And then finally I was like, well, there's a lot of misconceptions about what DACA is, what an undocumented person looks like or is doing. And I decided I didn't want to live like that no more. So my activism, I think my first like big activism expression was 2 years ago. I feel like with 2020 and the virus, it's all over the place. I'm like, I don't even know what year it is. But my friend Jessica and I, we did a rally and a march in downtown Boise at City Hall. And this was regarding the family separation and ending having kids in cages in our borders. So we had no experience whatsoever in organizing. This was our first time putting anything together. We were just like really like some really pissed off Latina moms that were like, hey, this is not okay. We need to do something about it. And we were able, we did this event in a month. Like we planned it all out in a month, and we had around 250 people that showed up. And that was just like, I cannot word how like amazing that was to just kind of feel that support and be like, okay, people really care about this issues, not just us. And that just started, I got, my relationships with people. I got an intern there as the legislative intern, and then I became the legislative advocacy, no, the advocacy, and now I'm the advocacy fellow. So it has been definitely a road, but it has made me feel like I can definitely use my voice and use the platform to really advocate, not just for undocumented people, documented people, but for other marginalized communities as well. So like I said, DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So it protects eligible youth from deportation. So there is definitely a lot of requirements. Like you have had to be under the age of 31 from June 15, 2012 to be eligible.
Hey everybody, sorry, Rosali's having some technical issues. She will be right back on.
Okay, well, gotta love Zoom, all of the all of this technology. But let me go back to my presentation. Okay. Let's see. There it goes. All right. What is a good Zoom call without a good technology problems, right? Okay. So like I was mentioning, let's see. So, back before when you would file your DACA fee, it would be $495 for every 2 years. So you would be set for 2 years with the work permit and you with that security as well, right? But unfortunately, this year, they decided that it was only going to be, you would only get a work permit for a year. So technically, they doubled that fee. So we're gonna be paying $495 every year. And also, I mean, sometimes your DACA, there might be some documents that you might be missing or new rules. So it was definitely like a really bad thing that happened for us, because when the Supreme Court ruled that DACA wasn't going anywhere in a sense for a while, everyone was really happy, and it was definitely a celebratory time. And then Trump decided that he was just not gonna listen to what the Supreme Court said. So you know, I'm thankfully, in a sense, DACA is still here, but we can see that there's more limitations, and it's still under attack, and there's still talk that it might be removed, putting 800,000 people's status on the line. So every time that people file their DACA, they get a background check, and lots of people have a lot of misconceptions of what DACA really is and what benefits people get. We cannot apply for FAFSA. I've been paying school out of pocket. There's some scholarships, obviously, that we can apply for, but sometimes if you look like on the lines of some scholarships, it says only for US citizens. So obviously we can't apply for those. So like right now, I'm paying college out of pocket. I don't get any FAFSA. We're not allowed to apply for FAFSA. And depending on what state, some states, if you're a DACA recipient, even if you have resided in that state for such a long time, they will still charge you out-of-state tuition. The benefits of DACA: I get a driver's license, I get a social, and I get a work permit, and that temporary safety net. So like I had mentioned, with DACA, it's lots of people decide that they don't want to talk about their status. Lots of undocumented folks, we don't want to talk about our status because there can be repercussions. So I decided that I didn't want to live in fear. That was something that I was like, I don't want to live in fear. Like, that's not a way to live. So I decided to start speaking out. I started to, talk to news media about my story and try to really change that narrative, about what a DACA recipient looks like, what a DACA recipient is. And I feel like when you are able to share your story, regardless of what story it is, I feel like that's powerful. Your voice, your story is the most powerful tool, in my opinion. Also, with working at the ACLU, I have been able to use those skills and and all of the tools that they have provided at this amazing organization, and use their platform as well to really push different DACA projects. So one of them is the Butterfly Migration Project. So this project, I started during the Supreme Court decision too, because I felt like there was a lot of misconceptions, like I said, about what DACA is. So this butterflies, we put it in downtown Boise. It has a brief explanation of what DACA is, some facts, and then words of support, as well as places that people can look for more information about DACA. Another project that I started was the Documented Project. So this is just collecting stories from different individuals that are documented. So it has definitely been a powerful, and I think lots of people have engaged, because you're able to really see that this, DACA recipients and documented folks are not as different as people might think. And we're just trying to live our lives and not be in fear. So obviously, like I had mentioned, I wanted to use my platform to really amplify our voices and really change that narrative and that dialogue. But there's a lot of people that, in regards to like the documented story, the story collection, they were like, I would always ask them, hey, are you okay with us showing your face? Some people would say yes, some people would say no. And that's respectable, because like I said, there could be repercussions. And this is some of the repercussions that could happen, and why lots of people sometimes don't want to share their story or want to talk about their status. So the picture, I'm like pointing, I'm pointing, I know you can't see me pointing at the laptop. So the picture on the left side, so that was after I did an interview with the Idaho Statesman, and I just talked about my story. So this was a message that I received. It was probably like paragraphs. This is just part of that screenshot I took. So this lady decided that she wanted to look me up and send me this nasty message. That was like one of the first things that I saw when I woke up, and I was like, whew, wow, like that definitely hit, especially because they were, they said things that I knew were not true, but I also felt like regardless if I answered to them or didn't answer to them, I felt like their mentality probably wouldn't have changed. And I'm not gonna lie, I did cry a little bit because it's still hurtful. It is hurtful when people, say this horrible things to you and you know that it's not true. So that was one of the messages that I had received. The second message I had received, this one was when I did the butterfly project. So this was a more recent message, and someone sent me this message, and as you can read, they were pretty mad, said all these horrible things. This time around, though, I just kind of laughed a little bit because, I think at the end of the day, I wanted to focus on all the positive. I had received a lot of positive messages from both of the times, like from the Idaho Statesman when I shared my story, but also from the Butterfly Project. There was a lot of great people that just reached out to me, and DACA recipients that are like, hey, this is so amazing, like, thank you. And I think that's just kind of what I wanted to put my focus on and put that energy towards. And that's why, I think speaking out, this is sometimes the stuff that you get, but I think it's just so important to really use our voices because like the quote on the top says, like, this is one of my favorite quotes. They tried to bury us, they didn't know we were seeds. But I feel like using all of the bad energy and just switching it and mixing it and just putting out some positive energy and really using that energy to just, amplify our voices and not let us, get shut down. So are you really engaged? So with civic engagement or activism, I feel like lots of people sometimes think that, to be an activist, like you have to be in a nonprofit or you have to, have like all of the skills, and sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating, but I think anybody can be involved in civic engagement. Anybody can be an activist. So this is the definition that Google has of civic engagement: working to make a difference in the civic life of one's community and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make the difference. Which in my own words is creating the community you envision. Like, what do you want your community to look like? And what are you doing to really have that community, that you're envisioning? What are the skills? What are the tools that you're putting together to really create that community? So some examples of that is volunteering. I think when we think of civic engagement, it has always been volunteering, whether it be for a nonprofit, profit, putting in those hours, and really helping out your community. Organizing or attending a rally. And I think one that many people don't really think about is like getting involved in your local elections and your legislative session. When we think about making a difference, we really think like national level, but I don't think people realize how big our local elections and showing up to our legislative session, putting in that testimony, it really creates an impact in our community. Use your platform. Right now, social media, it's a big thing. So like, seriously, even if you have like 1-2 followers on whatever it is, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, really use your platform to put out that information, educate people. I think that is one of the biggest things. Like when you think about what you're putting out on your social media, are you just like, yes, we can have like some fun, put some great memes. I know I do that, but also use your platform to educate. There's many times that I'm putting stuff on my Instagram or my Snapchat and people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was happening. And I was like, yeah, like it is happening. It might not be on the media, that might not be the news story, but it's still happening. So definitely use your platform to educate. And I think one of the biggest things is educate yourself, educate your friends, your family. Thanksgiving is coming, Christmas is coming, holidays are coming. Really take that time to have those conversations with people, because I feel like to create a better community, it starts with your own circle, your family, your friends. So I think it's really important to really have those conversations and have that dialogue. And of course, voting is so important. Go vote. Like, like, what are you waiting for? Go vote, put in your vote. There's a lot of people that say, oh, well, my vote doesn't matter. Like, why should I go vote? DACA recipients, undocumented folks, we're not allowed to vote. Like, we can't do that. So we need people to go vote on our behalf. And I think instead of being like, well, I'm not going to vote because, switch that mentality and be like, hey, I'm going to vote because, because my friend is a DACA recipient and she can't vote, because, I want to create a place where it's more, a country that's more inclusive, more diverse. I think voting is definitely a privilege. It's your right to vote. And I think it's definitely important for you to exercise that. So, working at the ACLU of Idaho, there's some volunteer opportunities. If anyone's interested, we're doing some phone banking. And also, if you experience any barriers when you go vote, this is a hotline that you can call, and that way we can make sure that everything's taken care of and we can help you out on whatever barriers that you might experience when you go out and exercise your vote. And let's see. So I know everyone, I can't see your faces, I can't see your beautiful faces, but I would really like for you guys to engage on the chat. Like, why are you voting? And if you're like, well, I don't want to vote, really think about how, like, voter suppression is very much real. So when you think about that, especially for marginalized communities, like, there's suppression. So they're, especially for like our Latinx folks, for our Black folks, for our BIPOC folks, it's really important to cast our vote. And like, when you're like, well, I don't want to vote, really think about like, hey, I'm going to go vote. If you're not like a person that goes vote or whatever, be like, hey, I'm going to go vote on so-and-so's behalf, on my, on my documented friends' behalf, on my undocumented folks' behalf, because they can't cast their vote. So I think it's really important for you to really think about that. I have like this shirt right here, that says, vote for the end of mass incarceration, vote for racial justice. So really think about why you're going to be voting and the importance of voting. So I would love for you to put on the chat why you're voting. And also, if you, once you go vote, or once you're going to go to the polls, or to you're going to send in your ballot, tag us, tag ACLU of Idaho, and tell us why you're voting. So I can see some people, I'm voting to protect women and peoples with disability rights, voting to help uplift those who are less privileged than I am. Yes, for the next 7 generations. I love that. I mean, I have a kid, and I know that if I was able to vote, I would definitely go vote, because I want a better future for him. So I am hoping that everyone goes and really exercises your right. And because I feel like this is just one of like those things that, it's so important. I can't even, say how important it is, especially this election. There's a lot of at stake. For DACA recipients, I know that, when I'm reaching out to my friends, I'm just like, okay, how are you doing? Like, how's everything going? And I know that, undocumented folks and documented folks, we're all gonna be watching elections and just kind of just holding on and just seeing what's gonna happen, because it can definitely determine not only the country's future, but also our life, our future as well. So make sure to tag us. I love seeing everybody's response. And I'm gonna leave you guys with this quote. So from John Lewis. So never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And that also means go vote. So this is some of my contact information. So you can always email me if you want to help out with the voting with the phone banking. You can reach out to my to this email. You can also reach me out on my Instagram. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat, to unmute yourself. So thank you, and make sure to go vote. Then I'll stop sharing here.
Thank you so much, Roseli. That was great. I do have a few questions, and if anyone else has questions, please go ahead and shoot them in the chat. One is, so you gave us some examples of you receiving some incredibly aggressive messages in response to your activism. I was wondering, I'm sure those are just like a few of many you receive. How do you decide what you respond to and what you don't respond to? Like, what is productive to respond to and what is not productive?
I think, I think it really depends on how the message is structured. They're like the ones that I showed you, you can tell that there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of things. And for this people to really, look me up and take that time out of their day to just go and send that hateful message, that's just the stuff that I just wouldn't engage, because I'm like, hey, this person already has their mindset, and I feel that regardless of what I say, regardless if I send them all of these facts, that won't change their mind. And then, I always get people that are like, well, why do you even talk about your story? Why do you even do all of these projects if you're not going to change people's mind? But I don't believe that. I feel like there's a lot of people that are in that gray area that just have some misconceptions, and when you're able to be like, hey, this is actually what's going on, you can really sway them to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's not always black and white. I think there's always that gray area, and I feel like with the work that I do, it's trying to help those people that are in that gray area and be like, hey, this is actually what DACA is. This is what actually undocumented folks do and don't do, So it's just putting that energy, and obviously it's hard. It's hard to see those messages. I mean, especially when they start attacking like my parents, and I'm like, you don't know my parents. Like, they are doing so much for me. They're doing so much. They're contributing so much to this country. So I definitely just changed that mentality, and I just put like all of that energy into my work and into my community.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to ask, we have a question in the chat, so I will wait on my question. As a current college student and DACA recipient, in what ways have you felt most supported by your college and or university? And what ways would you like to be further supported as a DACA recipient and current college student?
Yeah, so I know that when, I believe it was election time. No, I can't remember if it was election time or if it was it was one of those times where DACA was just under attack. But I remember a professor actually reaching out to me and being like, hey, how are you doing? And this was a professor, obviously, that they knew my status, that I felt comfortable sharing that. But sending that out, I remember, so I'm doing BSU and CWI, so I'm going to both. And I remember CWI had sent out an email, and this was a while back, and they sent out a mass email being like, hey, DACA recipients, pretty much a letter of support to DACA recipients. And I thought that was just amazing, because I felt like, hey, the school cares about me. These are people that actually care about me. I can't remember if BSU has put anything out, but I think when a school is able to really show their support and be vocal about it, I don't need any behind the scenes. Yeah, of course, we appreciate the behind the scenes, but I really think taking that stance, for a school to take that stance, hey, we're here, we support you, and you matter. I think that just makes a big difference and really makes you feel comfortable, especially when, when there's all of these decisions being made regarding pretty much your life and your future. It's good to feel like, hey, I have that level of support, and I can go to a place, in this case, school, and know that the school has my back.
Thank you. Do you have any suggestions on how to best support friends and or peers who are DACA recipients, especially during scary times when it's being challenged? Yeah,
I think just reaching out to them. I think that's just so important. Reach out to your friends. If you know someone's a DACA recipient, just, a simple message. Sometimes, I know during the Supreme Court decision and that period of time just of waiting and waiting, I was just feeling so anxious and just so emotional. And sometimes I wouldn't respond to messages because I was like, okay, I just need some time. But just seeing those messages come through of people just being like, hey, Roseli, like, how are you doing? Like, that just means so much. Like, hey, I'm here for you. Like, is there anything you need? And like, for me, my way of like maybe handling things might be different from a different DACA recipient person. I feel like the emotions can be very similar. Some people might just need like their space, but for you, I'm pretty sure everyone can say like when they receive a message that like, hey, I'm here for you if you need anything, it definitely like lifts our spirits up. And I know when the Supreme Court decision was ruled in our favor, everyone was texting me. Like, I remember just like, because we didn't know when that was gonna happen. So I remember I was just like checking my messages, like my social media, and I was like, okay, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And then I had stayed up the whole night waiting for a decision, like the next morning, and I passed out. Like, literally, I was like, I just need to close my eyes for 5 seconds. I passed out for probably like 20 minutes. And then after I woke up, the decision was made. And I had like so many, my phone was blowing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to open this. And when I opened it, I was like, congrats, Roseli, like things are good. And it was just so good. It was such a good feeling. So yeah, just reach out to them. I think just saying, hey, I'm here for you if you need anything, that's like totally appreciable. That's not even a word. That's very appreciated.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. I remember, because we were both interns at the time at ACLU, I remember how freaking long we were waiting for that decision. Have you ever, so you talked about the emails and Facebook messages you received. Have you ever had anyone express hostility toward you in person while you were being politically active? And if so, how did you handle that?
Yeah, so I guess I wasn't being politically active in the sense of I wasn't like in a rally or anything. This was more like on a personal level. So I had gone to, I was gonna, not intern, I was trying to get a job as a radio host. I was like, hey, I'm just gonna do it. I was like so nervous, but I went. And I remember later that time, the guy, like the owner of that radio station, he was like, hey, like, let me talk to you. And I thought we were gonna talk about the job, you know, what the job entitled, whatsoever. And then he started talking about like this very political stuff. He started talking about like undocumented folks and, you know, like how just this horrible stuff. And I was just sitting there because this was a job. I mean, this was like the manager pretty much talking to me about all of this. And I was just sitting there like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. Like this is, and this was a few years ago. So I wasn't very like vocal either about, well, you know, my status. So I was just sitting there listening to this guy just go off about how he just like hates immigrants. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like you work in a Latinx radio station, like that's like the people you're even reaching out to. So I just kind of like had enough, and I just had to like, you know, put myself together and be like, hey, like what you're saying is just like not okay. Like, and I just kind of went off and explained like, hey, like you can't, when you haven't been in somebody's shoes, especially in undocumented folks, and realize how much they had to go through to be here. I think like there's no really like a, you know, you can't really like say all of this stuff. And also in his position, that he was in a position in a sense of power, because he was the owner of this place, and to be talking to me that way, I just decided to just walk away. I was like, hey, like thanks, but bye. Like I don't even want to be involved in this. I don't want to be here. And I think, you know, also when I've been in different campaigns, and not just immigrant rights, but also like ACLU wise, the ACLU sometimes has like a very, you know, there's people that don't like the ACLU. They think we're just like, we're suing people, and we're just like, hey, we just want rights for everybody. So I think it's just important to realize when to engage and when not to. Obviously, there's going to be people, I think now we're seeing more than ever, people, there's a lot of hostility. So I think it's just important to realize like when it's important to engage and when not to. And if that requires that you're not going to be safe if you engage, walk away. Sometimes like you don't want to do that, because that person you're going to engage, like that can just result in you not being in a safe space, especially if you're alone. Like try not to engage. And I think it's also feel the room. I'm not saying don't ever be vocal, because I think it's important to be vocal, to stand up, especially if you're seeing someone, being discriminated or whatsoever, but also feel the room of what's going on, and realize when it's better to walk away and when it's better to engage. But always stand up for people. Just
Thank you. Are there any efforts at the state level to push for an immigration reform that we could support?
Yeah, so I think right now, so I feel like maybe it's reaching out to like your lawmakers, reaching out to the governor. I think that's kind of like in the sense local level that you can get engaged in. Definitely, I mean, I think the people that make the decisions obviously is like Congress and the president. So I think reaching out to people that are like in like those positions. So like definitely like look at like your lawmakers and like what spaces or like what different categories, not categories, but they're involved in as well.
Going off of that, I kind of have a follow-up, something I personally want to know, and something I struggled with this summer. And I think you'd be great to answer this as a employee of a nonprofit and someone who has a lot of experience. There's this idea, rightfully so, because I think there are legal reasons, that nonprofits are not allowed to support specific political candidates or speak against like voting for a specific legal political candidate. How do you navigate that in the current climate when it's so clear that there are specific candidates who are for the initiatives you're fighting for, and there are candidates who are clearly not for that?
Yeah, definitely. So for my job wise, we're nonpartisan, so we work with both parties pretty much, especially in our legislative session. So but when it comes to like my personal, as I think it's just like that division of like work and personal life. So I think with me, like in my personal life, like I just make sure that I use my platform, like social media, to really advocate for this, well, ACLU wise, because we advocate for the rights and for immigrant rights as well. But using like my personal platform, my personal social media to really like not tell people, but really encourage people to go out and vote, especially for like a specific person that I'm like, hey, this is a person that would really help immigrant rights, that will help, with the racial injustice that's going on in our country. So that's where I use my platform, where I'm able to really be vocal about who to vote for, pretty much, when I can't vote. With my job, obviously, I just stay neutral in the sense of, just we're nonpartisan.
Also, you talked about something I think that's important to note because your career is a big part of who you are. This hatred toward the ACLU, and how do you pull people onto these civic engagement initiatives and convince, especially like younger people, to convince them to get civically engaged when maybe your job title or the header on your letter immediately puts people off?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize, like with the ACLU, we work on different issues. So like saying when we go to the legislative session, I mean, we work on criminal legal issues as well. So I mean, with that one, I think regardless of what party you're affiliated with, everyone can be like, hey, like, I know someone, or I know someone that knows someone that has been incarcerated. So I think pulling in, because I think at the end of the day, it's like finding that common ground. I think we can all find that common ground where we're like, hey, this is something that's important. This is something that like we both have these values, but it might look different for different people. So I think, when it comes to like civic engagement, it's just, I think really building those relationships and be like, hey, like, what are things that you care about? And I think at the end of the day, you would realize that lots of people have that same mentality, that they want to really, that they have those like, hey, I want a better community. I want that diverse community. But I think it's just like really shifting that mentality and like really educating them. I think education is like a big portion of anything that we do. And like ending those like misconceptions that people might have.
Thank you. A couple more questions, I promise. I'm sure you want to go have a good old drink to answer. I promise.
It's Tuesday. What are you talking about?
I know. I know the real tea, Rosselli. But I'll keep quiet. One is you had good advice on what we can do to support DACA recipients, especially in times when it's being challenged. I was wondering, what are common things you see, people like us who are trying to be allies do that we think is helpful, but that we shouldn't be doing? Like, what are the don'ts of being an ally for you?
I think the biggest thing is like, when it comes to issues, like learn when it's okay to use, when it's okay to speak, and when it's better to just give that person that space to speak. So in the sense of like, you really want to amplify the impacted individuals' voices. I've seen sometimes that, of course, the intentions are always there. We appreciate allies, but sometimes we see some rallies or some marches where people want to like speak for us. And sometimes there could be some misinformation there too that they are talking about. So I think it's really important to reach out to the community that you're wanting to get involved in and see what best way it is to help them out. I think it's important to amplify impacted individuals' voices, not to speak for them. I think that's something that I just feel like undocumented, documented folks, we always hear people speaking for us, like, oh, DACA people, this is how they are. There's always that dialogue and that narrative. And it's like, hey, like, we have a voice too. Like, let us use it and let us tell you like what we need and what we're about.
Thank you. And then finally, more into more specific demographics of DACA recipients. What suggestions or advice would you give to younger DACA recipients during times, again, when it's being challenged? Because maybe people who, maybe they're too young to understand the repercussions and the jurisdiction the government has over them.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, it's like the biggest saying that like lots of Latinx people use, "Sí se puede," yes, we can. So I think it's really important to realize that, to not lose hope, most of all, because I know that when I was in high school, I was like, well, I can't even work. I can't even, how am I going to pay for college? How am I going to do this? And I was very discouraged. And I remember my parents always saying like, hey, regardless of what happens, you have to keep going. Like, don't lose hope, keep going. And then, here I am, I have a good job, I have my family, I'm going to school. And I think it's really important to just like, don't give up. Someone's raising their hands. Yeah, so I think just not give up. And I think it's, always moving forward, because if we're always thinking about like all the obstacles that are in our way, we're never going to do anything with our life. We're just going to have our life on hold. And I think for lots of us, that's how it feels, that we can't really plan for our future because there's other people determining our future for us. So I think it's important to take back that power and really focus on ourselves and just kind of keep going. I know that in the back of our mind, it's always, that thought of like our status and what's going to happen to us is there, but it's important to keep moving forward.
Thank you so much, Rosselli. Give me a second. We actually have a participant who would like to share a story. Rosselli, this is Jesse Martinez. He's the director of our Office of Multicultural Affairs. And Jesse, is it letting you unmute yourself? Let me know.
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, hi.
Oh, perfect. Hello. Yeah, thank you very much, Roseli, for your presentation. Very inspiring, and I just wanted to share a quick story, and it's something that you touched on and demonstrated here with us today, right? Really showing that braveness and resiliency, that our DACA and undocumented communities, demonstrate on a daily basis, right? And I remember it was in late 2016, early 2017. I was listening to the radio, the Spanish radio station from California, in my office, and I remember hearing that the wall was going to go up, and I just remember thinking, this is very horrible, right? Not only symbolically, but everything that it stands for. And I remember that I reached out to a few close students that I work with that are DACA recipients, and I literally was taking it very difficult emotionally and mentally, right? I mean, because I was like, whoa, what the messaging and everything. And I remember that conversation with my first DACA student. It was very refreshing and inspiring, right? He's like, Jesse, calmate, like this is something that we have to handle and live with on a daily basis, right? He's like, todo está bien, nothing changes. Nothing changes. Hay que seguir echando ganas. And I mean, but I think, that perspective, I mean, I was like, wow, right? I mean, and I think when that question also about allyship and everything that we think about, like, oh, how can we support? A lot of times is probably we need more support, right? Emotionally and mentally, because of the braveness and resiliency that our community has. So thank you again for demonstrating that here today with us. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing now in our community.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think most of all, what I always think about is like my parents, like they're immigrant. And I was like, hey, they're still here in this country. They're not losing hope. And I was like, why would I? When they have, crossed deserts and borders and they're here, they're trying to build everything for their family, for our family. And I was like, why am I going to give up when my parents haven't? So I think it's really important to be resilient and to keep pushing forward, and I think for those people that want to be allies, like just really listen to the needs of the impacted individuals. I think that's the best thing to do, and that's how you can move forward on the support that you want to provide to them.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Gracias. I think the last thing I want to say, if I don't know if you had another question, Aaron, but just like with civic engagement, I think lots of people sometimes get intimidated by the word activist or civic engagement. I think it's important to realize that anybody can be an activist. Anybody can get engaged. Like you really don't need to be like an organizer, like create a rally or a march if you don't want to. Like it honestly starts with just your circle. One thing that like one of like me and my friends are doing, we're starting like this kind of like a book club in a sense, where we're just we're barely going to start it tomorrow, but we're going to read articles or like different podcasts, like movies, and we're just going to talk about them. And I think lots of times there's some people that maybe don't want to ask those questions. Like sometimes when you're in a group with like activists, you're like, oh gosh, like what if I say the wrong thing or whatever? And this is kind of like more like a, hey, like we're here to learn. Like not everyone doesn't know everything, but together we know a lot. And I think it's important to realize that. So for us, we're just creating like a little, hangout. It's called Late Night Power Talks, where we're listening to podcasts in a week, and we just decide like, hey, we're gonna watch a movie and we're gonna talk about different issues that are going on around. We're gonna get educated. We're gonna hold each other accountable. So you can literally do that. Go with a friend, be like, hey, today let's watch a movie about mass incarceration, about undocumented folks, and like let's talk about it. Like what can we learn? How can we get more educated about this? And most of all, guys, we're in college. Do your research. That's one of the biggest thing in college that we learn. Do your research. Definitely dig in and create your own your own thoughts and your own judgments in a sense. Don't just base it off of like comments and like she said this, he said this, they said this. Do your research and get educated about the issues going on around you.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Roseli. We really appreciate you being here. and we appreciate your time. And thank you, just quickly, thank you to Nick from Housing and Residence Life for organizing this, Amber from the CVSA for co-hosting this, and again, Roseli, thank you so much for your amazing presentation and for sharing your story and your knowledge with us. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank